You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that and get back to you after a quick break. Stay with CNN.
That's White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, and he might have just confirmed that the U.S. is about to go under martial law. And that's also probably why CNN didn't post this original clip from the live stream, but instead posted a different version of this whole interaction.
Under federal law, Section Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has the authority anytime he believes federal resources are insufficient to federalize the National Guard to carry out a mission necessary for public safety.
Now, of course, they will tell you the stream glitched and they decided to ask the question again, but then why did Stephen Miller change his answer? Why does he seem to be reading from a script the second time he answers the same question? And why does he look like a kid who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar as soon as he mentions the words plenary authority? Well, let me answer those questions. I'm sure you guys have heard that this term basically means absolute power and authority. And the US president does have plenary authority in some instances. Like when Biden decided to pardon people like Anthony Fauci and his own son, he was using this same authority. But that's not what Stephen Miller was talking about. He mentioned Title 10 of the US Code and he was referring to Section 252 under the insurrection part of Chapter 13 entitled Use of Militia and Armed Forces to Enforce Federal Authority. This section basically gives the president absolute power to send troops into U.S. states in order to stop any kind of rebellion or insurrection. And you gotta remember, it comes only days after the president said this.
Over a weekend. What?
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe.
Now, at the surface, it just looks like they're talking about using this act to send troops into U.S. cities to bring down crime like they did in D.C. However, you gotta understand they cannot use the president's plenary authority for local gangs. There needs to be an insurrection. And this is where you need to see what kind of insurrection they're talking about.
We're not going to stop at just arresting the violent criminals we can see in the streets. Fighting crime is more than just getting the bad guy off the streets. It's breaking down the organization brick by brick. Just like we did with cartels, we're going to take the same approach, President Trump, with Antifa. Destroy the entire organization from top to bottom. We're going to take them apart. Thanks to your bold leadership and the designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, which is exactly what they are, Americans will no longer tolerate their unhinged violence. Thank you.
There are two big problems with what she just said. The first problem is that even a toddler at this point knows that you have to investigate billionaires like George Soros to stop the funding of these violent organizations. Once again, I have covered the whole shady network in multiple videos, and you can check them out to see where the money comes from. My other issue with her statement is that she's talking about using the same tactics they used against cartels, but this time it's going to be on American soil soil and against American citizens. And who's gonna decide if an American citizen is a dangerous member of Antifa or just a patriot who's fed up with all the lies and is using his or her right to protest against the government? I certainly hope we're not giving that responsibility to Pam Bondi here, because everything she does is scripted, and at this point, I don't know who's writing that script. I mean, just yesterday, she had this heated argument with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay.
Now, her notes have been leaked, and it's ridiculous how childish her arguments are. I mean, she already knew that Senator Whitehouse would ask her about Epstein, and instead of just saying no, she started talking about him taking donations from Reid Hoffman. Now, let's be clear. If you take money from Reid Hoffman, you are scum, but there is so much wrong with Pam Bondi's response. For instance, if she really thinks Reid Hoffman was involved with Epstein's evil activities, then she should dismiss and investigate Kash Patel immediately, because he has said Epstein had no clients at all.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
Also, she is more than happy to talk about Reid Hoffman, but she won't mention Peter Thiel, who made millions working with Epstein and then decided to donate $15 million to our sitting vice president.
You're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far?
There are all these different scenario. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
Does that mean J.D. Vance is also compromised? Now, while she was saying all this scary stuff about Antifa, Jack Poso made this remark.
Organized on campus, we are getting more and more people coming out in the face of this threat, knowing what happened to Charlie. But Mr. President, we need to do something about this, because I fear that the next one who could be killed could be sitting at this table right now. And we're not going to stop, but they need to stop, and they will not stop until they are stopped.
He's basically saying what happened to Charlie will happen to all of them if they don't take these drastic actions. And I told you they would do this. They would use Charlie's public assassination to justify more surveillance. But it seems like they might use it to bring more troops into our cities. They can always just tell us the truth about all these assassinations. But we all know they won't, since they know what happens when someone tries to speak up. Candace knows this too, and that's probably why she made this announcement.
But I went ahead this week and sent around a life insurance policy of sorts, a package rather, to people that I trust, a package filled with text messages, emails, private communications, videos, and private legal documents. So if anything happens to me, you guys will know exactly who it is that has been making my life a living hell over the past couple of years. People that are trying to bankrupt me and my family, that are threatening us to sue us. Everything that Kanye said was so real. Okay. I'm now at that point where you look back and you go, man, Kanye was right. He was really saying something about what it takes to leave.
It's insane that things have become so bad where she had to do this. And it's all happening because our agencies are compromised. Kash Patel, who will not tell us the truth about any major case, is now busy saying things like this.
We learned that the Chicago city streets have 110,000 gang members. That's right. You heard me right. They had 1,200 shootings this year alone, 360 homicides.
Look, I agree the crime rate is horrendous in cities like Chicago, but this isn't a third world country where we just flood our cities with armed troops. Now, while all of this was going on, Marjorie Taylor Greene exposed how the Senate used the nuclear option to override the 60-vote rule and confirm more than 100 Trump nominees. However, they will not use it to reopen the government, even though legally they can. And looking at this, I'm starting to fully believe that they're just using this shutdown to stop the House vote on the release of the Epstein files. I mean, Speaker Johnson wouldn't swear in newly elected Representative Grijalva, even though he's done this before to bring in some other congressman only a couple of months ago.
You're an embarrassment. You could sign on to the bill. Let me ask you a question. You have 4 Democrats on here. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. It's a clean extension for 1 year. You voted for the one big ugly bill, correct? I voted for a tax cut bill that gave the largest tax cut to Americans in history, including, by the way, the average New Yorker getting a $4,000 tax cut. Are you against that? You're embarrassing yourself right now. Do you want to cut the standard deduction in half? The largest cut to Medicaid in American history. You voted for that. Fraud and abuse, by the way. You voted. Tom DiNapoli, the Democratic controller of New York. Let me ask you a question. Pointed out that $1.2 billion were wasted. Listen, you're not going to talk. You're not going to talk to me. You're not going to talk to me and talk over me because you don't want to hear what I have to say. Oh, I'm listening. So why don't you just keep your mouth shut? Oh, because you showed up. Is that the way to talk? You showed up. Yeah. And so you voted for this one big ugly bill. You can extend it right now. A permanent extension of massive tax breaks for your billionaire donors.
Look, there are only so many red flags you can ignore before you realize that they are making a fool out of us. All these violent attacks happened right when people, including die-hard Republicans, started pressuring the government on things like the Epstein files and our unnecessary involvement in foreign conflicts. And now they are using all those shady, violent attacks to silence people and end any kind of opposition.
Flag burning mob, and we've made it 1 year penalty for inciting riots. We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the court said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. I've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts.
I understand completely that someone burning our flag is not something Americans ever want to see, but you gotta remember that it is part of our freedom of speech. It sets a precedent, and I'm just afraid that they can use it to take away our other rights as well. Now, let me know what you guys think about today's video. What are your thoughts on this whole martial law situation? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch today's video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.